standing at the border of what we used to know. 5 points in the darkness make a different kind of show. They say we're better together, but what do they know when the stars align differently down here below? And maybe we'll rise when we cut all the ties. There's a flag that we fly under our own sky. Remember all the stories that your granddad told about a republic that wouldn't be controlled. Now the suits in the city say we've all been sold, but there's a fire burning that just won't get old. And maybe we'll rise when we cut all the ties. There's a flag that we fly under our own sky. They draw their lines on paper, we draw ours in the sand. Some dreams are getting closer, while some don't understand. Don't understand. The highways stretch forever toward a setting sun, where cattle graze on memories of battles won. They say unity's the answer, but maybe we're done with playing by the rules of the chosen ones. Oh, maybe we'll rise when we cut all the ties. There's a flag that we fly under our own sky. And maybe we'll rise when we cut all the ties. There's a flag that we fly under our own sky. Our own sky. Our own sky.
Well, good evening, everyone. So glad we could be here for a late night coffee talk. Hang on, there is something missing. Oop, there it is. Okay, well, I'm not gonna lie, taking me a little bit to get used to the new day of the week, but you know we're here, right? And that's what matters. Hopefully, we'll have more talk than coffee tonight, but I could do with a lot of coffee. Anyway, look, hey, thank you so much for joining us on the brand new night for late night coffee talk. I'm really excited. We had to, you know, greatest good for the greatest number of people, right? Utilitarianism in action, at least where this is concerned. Wednesday nights was very difficult for everyone. And so we just, this is where we hit. So Thursday nights it is. So make a note. Coffee Talk will be every Thursday night instead of every Wednesday night. And I think that makes a lot of sense. Before we talk about that change, though, let's get a little housekeeping done, if you don't mind. For those of you joining us for the first time, I'm Daniel Miller, president of the Texas Nationalist Movement, and this is Late Night Coffee Talk. This is that day of the week, that time where I take a break from what I'm doing, working on Texas independence, and I come fire up this, and I take your questions. I get to talk about things that are on my mind, things that are in the news. You get to ask me questions. Pretty much anything you want. Questions have a tendency to gravitate from standard TEXIT questions, which you can always get at texitnow.org, to some more complicated questions, to things about the TNM, to news of the day, politics of the day, to personal things. I mean, you guys, I make myself accessible to all of you every single week. And that's something that's really kind of a transparency that's unheard of. You don't see a lot of folks in my position doing that sort of thing. So I'm here for it. I'm here for your questions and here to talk about things that are burning issues for me as well. So that being said, now that we've laid out the rules of the road, here's how you can ask your questions. If you're watching on YouTube, be absolutely sure to go hit like and subscribe and hit the notification bell. Drop your question in the chat, which is open for everyone. Get to meet some of the other people in there as well. Maybe you'll get some, sometimes your question may not even have to hit me because somebody in chat will take care of it. And while you're there, go ahead and check out our brand new YouTube channel memberships. We're getting content ready, and content's already launching over there exclusively for channel members. So make sure you go check that out. Additionally, if you're watching on Facebook, all you got to do is be sure like and share and drop your questions in the comments, and we'll get them there. If you're watching on X, which increasingly more and more of you are doing, you can drop your questions in the chat on this video. If you at us or just comment on the post about it, it doesn't show up over here. So you have to be sure you're on the video, drop your question in the chat, and then, we'll get to it from there. Obviously while you're there, follow, right? Do a follow, do they can't even call it retweet, a repost, I guess, on Twitter. Do whatever you got to do there. Additionally, if you're watching on Rumble, hi, Rumble. We would love to be able to take your questions, but you need to tell the Rumble engineers to work on the API between the streaming software and Rumble, because it is not feasible for us to run multiple production windows. Just not what we're going to do. So get them to do that. But thank you guys so much anyway for watching over there. We're going to slowly be ramping up some more of what we're doing on Rumble. We've already had some folks come over there and give us the equivalent of super chats or whatever, and we thank you for your support of the movement. Additionally, if you want to email your question, you can do it. It will be down below. You will see it's coming. It's coming. It'll be here in just a second. Oh, no, I think it already passed. Anyway, you can email your questions to coffeetalk@thetnm.org. That's coffeetalk@thetnm.org, and it's right there at the bottom. Let me go ahead and do this as well. Look, we sort of soft launched our YouTube channel memberships, which go to help support the production of content in the TNM. And I would like to take an opportunity to thank our first out of the gate channel members. So thank you to our YouTube channel members, Ron Raffoon, Melinda Lou, Jasmine N., Lee Jacobson, Larry Belk, and Netgear. Thank you so much for your support of what we're doing here at Late Night Coffee Talk and all across the content that we're doing on the TNM's YouTube channel. So thank you so much for that. And look, I got to say thank you guys for all the feedback that we have gotten. I will tell you that we have surveyed this issue of which day we were going to do Coffee Talk. off and on, large sample sizes, posted it on TNM social, gotten feedback. And, a lot of you guys indicated that Wednesday night was just not going to be a good night for you, right? Wednesday night was never going to be a good night because you were at church, you had Bible study, whatever it was. And so, we wanted to do everything we could to accommodate as many people as possible. And it turns out the people that watch on Wednesday nights were not to put out that we were moving to Thursday. So Thursday it is. And so everybody now has, not necessarily everyone, but more people have an opportunity to plug into what we're doing here on Late Night Coffee Talk. And anyway, so thank you to everyone who has participated in, giving us feedback on this and responding to questions and things of that nature. And we're going to just keep at it. We're going to keep plugging away every single Thursday night, and we'll be shifting a bit of the format, obviously, with your questions, but we're going to be incorporating some more content, some interviews occasionally, a lot of perspective on what's happening in the larger world in the scheme of what's going on with TNM and TNM's mission. And tonight is going to be one of those nights because I have got a good rant worked up, and it's going to be a humdinger. But before I talk about that, I want to also give a quick shout out and congratulations to the leadership team, brand new leadership team there in Walker County and Huntsville. You guys know where Huntsville is. They officially launched their county group in the interim. So since we were together last, they officially had their launch meeting, officially certified as an organized county in the TNM. And we had a room full of people that braved a pretty horrible thunderstorm to be there. So thank you to everyone who came out to support those leaders in the forming of that new county group. And especially to the leaders who went through, and you heard me talk about it before, went through an intense amount of training to be leaders in the TNM. And so I'm very appreciative to you guys, very appreciative to everyone who was there. So welcoming to Kara and I, and just a textbook meeting, and really appreciated the time I got to spend with everyone there. So congratulations to Walker County. All right, before I get to what I got to say, I got to make sure I got plenty of coffee on board. And look, I'll even throw this on there. You say that now, John Bolgiano, but just wait. And I'm sure you probably know, like, guys, I think I may have said it before, but if you don't know John, John is one of our local leaders, diehard TNMer. And that guy's trudging down there to the Capitol all the time to support and testify on bills and things that directly advance the mission of the TNM, that help you out. And after they had 9 hours on the floor yesterday, I got to see, was watching the live stream, and I got to see John finally testify last night. And man, his hair was jacked up. You could tell he was in it. He was in for the long haul. He had a very, very, very long day. But you know what? He stayed, and he showed up to the State Affairs Committee, and he testified. And it was great to see. So big thank you, everybody. Send a big thank you to John Bolgiano. Okay. I'm trying to be a less angry person. Not that I don't think that righteous anger is a thing, but I'm trying to just sort of keep things more in perspective. There's a lot of things that don't rattle me that would rattle folks, but there's just sometimes when something happens and you're so not surprised, not puzzled. Maybe the word I'm looking for is disgusted. Right? It's just, you just witness something happen, and you're just so disgusted, revolted, and that thing that happens strikes at the very foundation of who you are, your personal identity, right? I mean, I have been for many, many years now a Texas first person. I have been at the core of my identity as being a Texian. And all that comes with that, right? This idea that Texans are fiercely independent and they want to put Texans first. And I know not all Texans are like that, but there is something about when elected officials take a crap on what it means to be a Texan or a Texian or from Texas or whatever it is, when they do something so heinous that that their actions betray excuse me, when their actions betray the very identity of who we are. And I'll tell you, from my perspective, I look at it as virtually no different than Antifa tearing down monuments, right? If they decided that somebody needed to take a wrecking ball to the Alamo or topple the San Jacinto Monument or go pee on the grave of Sam Houston. I kind of, and maybe that's just too simplistic. Maybe there's nuance, but I have a tendency to group those sorts of things together, especially when when it deals with fundamentally who we are, right? And I'm just going to warn you, there's going to be a lot of pausing tonight because I'm having to self-edit because this is a bit of a family show. And so pardon me if I do some pausing, but I got to tell you, as big of a steaming pile of bull crap as the Texas legislature has been this session, and I'm going to be honest, I've talked to a lot of people that have been at this a very long time, and we pretty much all agree that this is the worst session that we have ever seen. This is as bad and definitely, in my opinion, worse than when Strauss was there. And it was easy when Strauss was speaker, right? Because you could just pin it all on him and say, there is a culture of retribution that exists. Joe Strauss is ruling the place with an iron fist. And that's just the way that it is, right? And so all of the angst and the anger in the Joe Strauss days got directed at Joe Strauss. And it was easy, I think, for a lot of people to let the individual legislators slide, right? I mean, it was always Strauss, and Strauss had his lieutenants, and they would catch grief. But I think there was a tendency to let the rank and file slide by, to get by with no accountability. And we didn't have Dennis Bond as speaker long enough to really figure out anything differently, right? I mean, he was there for a hot second. It was basically one hidden recorder did him in. But then you had Dade Phelan, and I think Dade caught a lot of the flack in a very similar way to Strauss. And I think it was sort of heaped on the lieutenants as well, very Strauss-like. But now we're in this session where you had a contested speaker's race. Dade Phelan was bounced. They replaced him with Dustin Burrows, who on a lot of those scorecards moving in had a really strong, quote unquote, conservative score, right? Everybody knew that he was part of Phelan's leadership team there in the House. But people were so sick of what had happened over all these years that they were willing to put up David Cook, who is not a conservative, does not really show pro-Texas or Texas first tendencies. to hold him up to make the challenge, right? I mean, because in their minds, Cook was better than Phelan, but then they got Burrows and pushed it and kept pushing that narrative. And so you got Burrows, and there are a lot of things about Dustin Burrows, the way that he's running it, that I feel are very similar to what we saw during Dade Phelan, Dennis Bonnen, Joe Strauss, a culture of retribution. But now it's not just Burrows and the lieutenants. I think today, out of everything, and look, I mean, I could pluck out a bunch of examples, but I think today, and seriously, what happened today, and frankly over the past few days, should erase any doubts from anyone's minds that this is just simply a leadership problem in the Texas House of Representatives. I'm going to tell you, we got a problem there, and we got a problem over on the Senate side. But tonight, the House gets my ire. We could talk about, and I could spend a lot of time talking about Dade Phelan's election bills, what they call, why they're referring to them as like election integrity bills or campaign. I mean, I don't understand, right? Because they're all pretty ridiculous, pretty silly, and the vast majority of Phelan's bills, like the meme bill or the texting bill, those things will never survive the first court challenge. I'm here to tell you, the first time they do it and they jail somebody for creating an AI version of him being drunk, that will go to court. It will get overturned. I mean, it'll just get struck down. I mean, that law, I think two of those laws as written are pretty much dead on arrival. And then on the other side, you got Phelan, who filed a bill that is effectively one of our legislative priorities and has been for over a decade, right? The ban on outside campaign, not a ban, but a restriction on outside of Texas campaign contributions. And so you look at it and go, man, that's pretty cool. But in the scheme of things, that is not redemptive. That does not make Dade Phelan Texas first. But today we had, I'm going to tell you, this is probably even a clearer litmus test to me for where these guys are than whether or not they signed on to the TEXIT referendum bill in the last two sessions. And I know that's a big kind of a big endorsement. I don't know that endorsement's the right word I'm looking for, but maybe a big reach. But I'm saying this because I believe it was a very clear, very, very clear litmus test that everyone in the Texas House was forced to participate in. And what I'm talking about is a bill that we've talked about on here before, right? We talked about the transactional gold bill. And the transactional gold bill, right? I did a whole podcast interview with Chris Bird where we broke it down, talked about what the transactional gold bill does, talked about how extremely important it was in a major step toward becoming operationally, structurally, and functionally more like an independent nation state. It would create one of the greatest strides in our independence that we have seen in legislation that's not the referendum, right? I mean, it's major. How many times, go back through the archives, how many times do I get asked, what is Texas going to do about currency? And I always say, look, if people realize how close we were to actually being able to float our own currency, then, I mean, it would floor most people. And the crazy thing is, they laid this bill right at our feet. I mean, it's a slam dunk. It is as pro-Texas, Texas first, saying, I want to put Texas sovereignty up there. We need to begin to operate as a sovereign nation. There are so many benefits with that piece of legislation that it's a slam dunk, right? But the first sign that there was going to be issues was in the committee in state affairs, when on one hand you had Charlie Guerin, which some of you may or may not know who Charlie Guerin is. I'm not going to try to imitate his voice, but it's pretty hilarious. But you had Charlie Guerin, and literally all of his questions centered around his barbecue restaurant. His barbecue restaurant, not about what the impacts were going to be for all business owners or anybody else. All he wanted to know about was his own barbecue restaurant. And then on the other side, you got Chris Turner, Democrat, right? We've had our run-ins with Chris Turner before, who is essentially attacking it from the angle saying, well, this is unconstitutional. It's illegal. You can't do this. States can't have their own gold-backed currency, blah, blah, blah. And he's citing cases that have literally nothing to do with a state doing this, have everything to do with private individuals doing. I mean, it was ludicrous. But the bill itself had over 80 co-authors. I mean, over half of the Texas legislature signed off already on this bill as co-authors. Mark DeRazio did a phenomenal job, Representative DeRazio, in filing it and going and building support. He tried it last session, basically ran out of time, spent a lot of time on this thing. And so it gets out of committee finally. It gets to the floor of the House. And once it gets to the floor of the House, yesterday, we had people up there at the Capitol. Our Executive Vice President Nate Smith, Chief of Staff Daphne Armour were up there. Bolgiano was up there for a completely different thing, but he was there too, right? Because we want to see this landmark piece of legislation fly through. We want to see the Texas House do something to not necessarily redeem this session, but maybe spray a little perfume on that steaming pile of turd that they have left for us this session. And the time is ticking, it's going, and all of a sudden the bill gets bumped, and everybody's like, how come they didn't hear it? It was scheduled on the calendar for today. What's going on? Well, come to find out, Charlie Guerin decided at the 11th hour that he wanted to file an amendment to the bill, which, given the amendment's contents, delayed it until today. Now, if you haven't seen the news article on the Texian Partisan, that's okay. I'll forgive you. Please go over there and read. But this is the amendment that he filed, that he tried to file last night and filed today. So you have this beautiful bill, this one that establishes transactional gold. It allows us to do, like, essentially establish a sound money currency to fight off the potential, to stave off the potential of a collapse of the U.S. dollar. And all, I mean, there's all these benefits. I'm not going to go into them, but this is what the amendment says. Authority to implement this subchapter is contingent on a ruling by a federal court of competent jurisdiction subsequent to the enactment of this subchapter by final and unappealable order that is within the state authority, that it is within the authority to issue specie and issue currency as described in this subchapter. No court of the state of Texas shall be deemed to be a court of competent jurisdiction for the purposes of this subsection. So I want you to think about this. Look at that first sentence. Authority to implement this subchapter, aka the currency, is contingent on a ruling by a federal court of competent jurisdiction. So Guerin files this amendment, which essentially says the state of Texas, before it does this thing that is good for Texas and good for Texans, must go grovel to a federal court to get a thumbs up. Now, how that's going to take place is kind of interesting, because is a federal court just going to hear this thing out of the blue? Now Texas has to litigate, maybe go get a declaratory judgment, or wait until one of the other states that has actually passed this law goes in front of a federal court. I mean, self-editing. I'm trying to be a good boy. So Charlie Geren files this amendment, derails its being heard on the floor last night, which bumps it to today. Go watch it today. Here he comes with that stupid amendment. And here is the saddest part of all. The amendment was added. Had to be voted on. You had, what, 29, 30 vote against the amendment? 29, I think it was. I'd have to go back and look. I mean, I've been too angry to go back and take a look. But I think it was somewhere in the ballpark about 29 that voted against that amendment. An amendment that said Texans had to go grovel at the feet of a federal court, which, not like we haven't had our problems with federal courts, right? But essentially what it says, hang on, let me just go back because I want to just nail this in. Because this right here is the key. Subsequent to the enactment of this subchapter, by final and unappealable order. Okay, so let me explain to you what that means. A final and unappealable order would perhaps be a ruling from the Supreme Court. Because allegedly those, Supreme Court decides it's unappealable. There's nowhere that it can be appealed, so it's unappealable. So what he's essentially saying is, before we can do any of this, we got to go kiss the butt of every federal court right on up the ladder, on up to the Supreme Court, and wait for all of them to give us their blessing that something that is well within our rights is a free and independent sovereign state that is not prohibited in Article 1, Section 10 of the Texas Constitution, that's been upheld by previous court rulings. Now, because Charlie Geren, for whatever reason, I don't know if today he wanted just to prove that, you know what, I'll still lick that federal boot. I mean, we can't do anything that might be crossways with our federal masters, so we have to go get their blessing and kiss their ring, right? Before we do something that's good for Texans. I mean, you got to understand, and this was brought to my attention by Nate. There is no precedent for this, especially at the state level, originating the state level. Now, Texas did have to. We were under Voting Rights Act pre-clearance, right? From the time of Jim Crow all the way up to, sometime after 2013. I think maybe it was the Trump administration that pulled us out of pre-clearance the first go around. But we haven't had to go ask the federal government for permission for anything across, except the Voting Rights Act. And then again, from the, and this was not by law, not by our law, but by their law, when the snowpocalypse happened back in 2021, where we had to go essentially ask the federal government for permission to use electricity that was not produced by green sources, right? Sustainables. We had to go get a waiver. We had to go ask for a waiver. But here we are. So normally that crap will come down from Washington, D.C. and rain upon our heads. But here we are. Here's Texas, right? The Lone Star State. This, where independence polls higher than any other state in the United States. That is home to the largest independence movement out of any of the states, and probably the largest in the Western Hemisphere. The Texas that proudly flies the come and take it flag. A legislature, a Texas House that literally just had a hoop it up session on the floor because they voted to pull the Travis letter and the Declaration of Independence out of the archives and put them on display. I mean, so this Texas, the one where the San Jacinto Monument is taller than the Washington Monument. All of these things that we think of as Texans. And then this Charlie Geren decides, you know what? This might be a good thing for Texans. You know, at least 80 of them thought it would be, right? Out of the 150, a clear majority. This could be a good thing for Texans. But yet, I still feel the need to get on my knees and beg Uncle Scam for permission. And not only just beg Uncle Scam, go to you got to remember, these guys literally have just finished campaigning on how out of bounds the federal courts are. I mean, nobody, I mean, to quote my poor departed mother and her very country ways, they're out there telling everybody that the federal courts are not to be trusted in an outhouse with a muzzle on. That's what we're being told. But yet this, my friends, is a poison pill. It is a torpedo into our economic sovereignty. And it was a case of self-harm. I mean, this is some quizzling behavior, quizzlings in cowboy boots, to basically say we have to go kiss the backside of the federal courts if we want to even have a chance at economic sovereignty and independence. It is an affront to everything it means to be a Texan. I mean, he would have signed the Travis letter instead of victory or death had been victory only with permission of a federal court. I mean, imagine that. I mean, this guy would have hoisted at the Battle of Gonzales a flag with a star and a cannon, and it would say, "Come and take it," with a federal court order. I mean, holy smoke. Travis draws the line in the sand. Travis says, every man that will cross this line and fight, do so, otherwise you can get. And he's going to stand on this side of the line and go, I don't know, I guess I maybe need to get Santa Anna's permission before I decide whether I'm going to cross the line. Do you think for a moment that the federal government is going to do anything to help make Texas any more free and independent? They are not here to enable our independence. They want to dig their claws and their tentacles into us as far and as deep as they possibly can. And this guy should have been laughed off the floor of the House. He should have been laughed off the floor. That guy should not even be in the Texas House. He should have been laughed off the floor of the Texas House. But what happened? They put the amendment up, and all but 29 people vote for the stupid amendment. So, you know, it would be one thing to single this guy out as a Moses Rose, a blouse-wearing surrender monkey, right? But here are his willing accomplices. It is the most anti-Texan thing that I have seen in a very long time. A clear litmus test we have not seen in a very long time as to who is truly Texan and who is a quizzling in cowboy boots. We haven't seen a clear one. I mean, we could say, you know, whether they sign on to the referendum or not, the referendum bill, we could say that that's a bit of a litmus test. But, you know, the real litmus test would have been if the referendum would have come to the floor and everybody had to state their preference on it. But, I mean, terms of surrender, giving up what it means to be a Texan, it is the most embarrassing thing. So Charlie Geren should be ashamed, but who should be more ashamed are the people that enabled him today. The people that decided that amendment, groveling to the federal government, was acceptable. We're going to get the vote totals for that amendment, and we're going to post them. Who voted how? We're going to get all that. We're going to get it posted. But I got to tell you, it makes me sick It makes me just absolutely, utterly sick at my stomach. Friends, here's the bottom line. For us to do what we got to do to fulfill the mission of the TNM, the political, the cultural, the economic independence, the securing of a constitutional republic and our inherent rights, we got to redouble efforts. Our focus, we all know the federal government's horrible, but we have to advocate for policies and positions that are going to be useful, that are going to move us toward independence. But I'm going to tell you that there is an impediment right there, and the impediment is that attitude, that mindset, that enabling. I mean, you could focus on Dustin Burrows all you want to, but it ain't just him that's the problem. If you think now that it's just Dustin Burrows and his leadership team, then you are missing the mark. You've missed it. You've lost the plot. You don't understand how this works because they only are able to do what they do because they are enabled by the rank and file. That's it. That's the reality of it. The fact that they decided they wanted to go grovel, that Garen said, let's go grovel, and 100 of the colleagues plus said, sure, sounds like a plan. Primaries are coming, folks. That is ultimately where these people are the most vulnerable, and they have all told you now exactly what kind of people they are. They can talk Texas first all they want to, but let me tell you something. When we first started this organization, the first piece of collateral that we ever printed that went to a meeting had a picture of the Alamo, had the Texas Nationalist Movement on it, and at the very top, it said, Texas first, Texas forever. You want to know Texas first? That's been us since the very beginning. All of these Johnny-come-latelys that are talking Texas, well, I'm both Texas first and America first. No, you're not. That's not first. That's a tie, right? That's not how first works. Go look it up in a dictionary. These Johnny-come-latelys preaching that they're Texas first and are folding like Superman on laundry day. Voting to beg the federal government for anything is disgusting. It's disgusting. You're gonna need to replace a lot of people down there. And so the question is going to be, are you going to do it? I can't do it by myself. You know, are we going to do it? Is that what's going to happen? Because if you want what you say you want, then these guys in this mentality cannot be allowed to continue. It can't be. I mean, how could you ever expect to achieve Texas independence with some of these knotheads in here? Look, Texas will be free. Texas will be independent. We are going to do this, but we are going to have to fight a brutal, bloody political battle to dig some of these people out like the ticks that they are. I mean, just this attitude is so cancerous. You know, I can't tell which one I dislike more, the traitorous attitude that's cancerous or the hopeless attitude that is cancerous. We have an opportunity. They just literally outed themselves and said, this is who we are. And now we know exactly. No apologies. I don't know that for any of those people that voted for that, I don't know if there's any coming back from that. I don't know that those people can be rehabilitated. But what I do know is that we need actual Texas first people. We need Texas nationalists in the Texas House that understand that Texas should be free and independent. Now, here's the good news, okay? I don't want you to think this is all doom and gloom, because it's not, because the bill passed with the amendment on it, which means it goes to the Senate. which could strip that amendment and very likely will strip that amendment, because it effectively, until it's stripped, it means the bill does nothing, right? It's just ink on paper. It does literally nothing until it's stripped. So there is a companion on the Senate side that's just sat in committee, and I think they're probably waiting to see what happened on the House side. But now the House bill is going over to the Senate, and we'll fight to see that amendment is stripped out, to strip that language out, because it is stupid and cowardly. I mean, it's just so pathetic. So, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, by the time all these machinations wind up, we very well could have our own currency without having to kiss the federal government's butt. And then the good news is that these people outed themselves for nothing. For nothing. They outed themselves. So I'm excited about our prospects. I'm upset about this other thing, as you could tell, because of just how it erodes at the foundation of who we are. But I'm excited because the bill at least advanced. And maybe if that's what it took to get that over to the Senate, get that amendment stripped out, and then get this thing done. But we're running out of time. And we're running out of time because that body called the Texas House is dysfunctional. It's broken. Excuse me. And it's not just dysfunctional because Dustin Burrows. I don't want to hear this crap that this is all on Dustin Burrows' shoulders. He shoulders a big bunch of the responsibility, but somebody put him there. And you want to see who these folks are? Don't let them come back into your districts and give you some song and dance about, well, I had to do this or I'd get my bills killed. What are you going to do? What are you going to do if somebody asks you to compromise on your principles? If that's all it takes, so-and-so said I'd get my bills killed. Kill every bill. I'll be honest with you. I'd be happy if they said, okay, here's the deal. We're going to get these bills passed that are the priorities, that are the Texas first things, and all your other faff and nonsense. We're just going to do everything we can to grind this place to a halt. I don't care if we don't pass anything. I don't care. But a lot of these guys are afraid to go back to their districts and say they didn't pass anything. So they're willing to compromise their principles. And some people say, well, you got to compromise. Yeah, but you don't have to compromise your principles, right? And that's what, unfortunately, too many of these guys are doing. So that being said, there is hope. And look, I'm just going to encourage you. If you are not keeping up with everything that's going on over here on this bad boy, look at that. There it is. Look at that. There we go. Look, here it is. It's all on the Partisan. Remember TNM News? Right now, it's the TXIT Partisan. Many of you guys were excited to hear that it's back. It is still the official news source of the TNM. But you want to read more about it, here's the article. There's Charlie Garrett up there worshiping the Supreme Court, because that's apparently what people like him do. It's very, very hard to believe that this guy has a barbecue restaurant. I could see him probably being a little more fit for, maybe running a soy latte bar. Kind of the vibe I get. Okay, friends, let's take some of your questions. There are plenty. So, because it's been a while, so I think we're going to wind up going overtime tonight, which is cool. I don't mind doing that. So we'll try to get through these as quickly as possible. But here we go. Super chat from Ron Raffoon. Hey, not only channel member, but Ron dropped this question. He says, I'm disgusted every time I sit in a legislative meeting. They are cowards and self-serving. Yeah. It's the environment down there is just downright hostile. I said it at risk of being repetitive. I have never seen it as bad as it is. I just haven't. I'm going to tell you, I think some of these guys are probably within a hair's breadth of being an Eastern European parliament and trading punches before this thing's over with. It's amped up in a way that I've never seen. But thank you for the super chat, Ron. I appreciate it. Morgan says, tired of these traitors in my house. It's understandable. Yep. James says we should never grovel before any judge. We're Texans. I agree. It's why I'm so twisted about this. I mean, can you imagine having to go explain this crap to people that are not in Texas that see this? I mean, you want to talk about an embarrassment of an at an international scale. You know, this is embarrassing. We should all be embarrassed by this because it was allowed to happen. I mean, there are people that I'm gonna spend months having to explain this to people, maybe years, and I didn't do it. But I got, we're Texans. We carry the brand, and this guy, the Quisling and cowboy boots, he's, and then all of his co-conspirators, they're in the House. They let their vote write a check that our butt has to cash. We're going to have to own up to that. We have to own what they did unless we do something to change it so they can never do that again. We can't let them, I've said it till I'm blue in the face. If they don't represent us, they can't be allowed to represent us. There's an election coming up. They have got to be ousted. They got to be gone. They can't go to the Texas House anymore. It's that bad. So at least it gives us some defense when somebody comes to us and says from anywhere around the world, hey, I thought you guys were the bastion of freedom and independence. What happened to that? Come and take it Alamo spirit. And we can say, yeah, we had some people that went kind of off base. And you know what we did is we voted them out and we replaced them with people that would put Texas first. That is an acceptable response, but only if we make it happen. Okay, this is the Crunch Bite. It says, Daniel, how will we keep people like Burroughs and Phelan out of Texas? They need prison for their actions. Let me tell you, I'm not going to say they need prison for their actions, but and I don't know that you're going to be able to keep them out of Texas. But the one thing you can do is if you don't like what they're doing, you can keep them out of office. Phelan, he won by 366 votes in a runoff. You know what that is? That's a couple of neighborhoods, a door knocking. That's a couple of neighborhoods of get out the vote and make sure people get there and vote. I mean, you could have been sans Phelan this session. You could have been. Burroughs, different story. But if you don't like it, you got to do whatever you can to swap it out. And the battle is not in Austin. I'm going to tell you, the battle in Austin is decided in the primaries. That's when the rubber meets the road. And I said this, guys, I know it's going to sound like I'm a broken record, or it's going to be jerky and it's going to sound like I told you so. But for those of you that didn't catch it the first time, I'm going to tell you. The next legislative session has already started right now. The next session has already started. And here's why I say that. Because the people that are going to sit in the next legislative session are going to be people that are elected in the general election before it, the November before it. And those people that are chosen in that November general election are going to be the people that were chosen in the primaries based off of the districts, because the districts are gerrymandered in such a way that effectively means all you got to do is win the party's primary for the party that has the lock on that district, and you get it. So what does that mean? So now let's get back to March, right? And those primaries are going to determine who makes the next round, and who is going to win in those primaries is being dictated by everything that is happening right now. If you are planning to run and you haven't announced, you haven't filed your treasurer appointment, you haven't started raising money, you haven't started talking to people and building that up, you're already behind. It's just the way it is. There are a lot of candidates already that I know of that are going to be running that have not announced yet. They're going to wait till the very end of the session, but there's some that have already announced. They didn't wait till we were a month in before they announced. All of it is being decided right now. War chests are being built. They're being built. I'm telling you. I mean, I'm if I go look at contributions to our PAC, which need to be more, or I go look at contributions to the C4, which deals with issue advocacy, which have not been stellar. I don't know that a sufficient number of people are upset enough to say we want to do something about this, because it's going to take a massive coordinated statewide effort to make this happen. The battle's not in Austin, the battle's in our backyards, and the battle still has to be coordinated and still has to work. There has to be issue advocacy. There has to be voter ed. I mean, there's a ton of things that need to be done. I mean, you guys want to know why I throw this thing up on the screen every time? It's because if we can't organize and we can't do outreach and we can't do those things, then next session's going to come around and I'm going to be talking about the same crap yet again that I have to talk about year after year, about how people like Charlie Geren are an embarrassment to Texas, and only if we got way more stuck in on this cause, we wouldn't have to deal with this crap. And guys, I'm going to tell you, we have to make this happen. We have to reprioritize our lives personally to try to make this happen. To try to make this work, to clear those impediments so we can get independence. Future generations are counting, but let's be honest, so are we. You know, we can talk about, look, we're building this for future generations, but there is an urgent, immediate issue, tons of them, that we've got to deal with. And everybody who thought you were going to take a pause because Donald Trump was going to be the best president ever, we're going to have this wonderful, you know what? Where are the Epstein files? I thought that was day one. I thought we were going to do that, right? What do we got? We got binders, and we didn't get them. They were given to social media influencers, and it was a bunch of staged crap, right? Where's that at? Where are the millions of deportations that were promised? Okay, cool. We've had illegal crossings go down a lot, so check. We got that done. But you have to remember, we're up to over 50 of Trump's decisions that are wildly popular, a lot of them here in Texas, that have been blocked by federal judges. The same federal judges that Charlie Geren wants to vest our economic sovereignty, that decision, he wants to vest it in their hands. I mean, is it all starting to make sense now about how all of this crap is tied together and how it's all locked together? I mean, this is clear and present for us. The needs are immediate. Alamo's Bard says, hey, I know that once we get enough popularity to make headlines, there's going to be opposition, and big opposition too. So how exactly will we cope with big media denouncing our movement? You mean all that media suppression and all that smear pieces that we've gotten over the past, 15 years, 20 years, doesn't count? You know, the headlines that we've had in the Atlantic and Newsweek and the New York Times and all these other places, that didn't count, but now we're worried about the future. There's already opposition. Go back and watch some of these live streams. Go read the news on the Texian Partisan. Go read about all of the fights that we have had to be in. I mean, they do everything. I mean, we're right now, people think, well, you know, we're kind of in a lull. No, we're not. I mean, we just are still going through a multi-month long battle because we're being throttled and suppressed by big tech, and emails aren't landing in your email boxes. I mean, that seems to be a silent war. The fact that, you know, we've got our guys that are in the legislature that are having their bills threatened to be canceled because they're standing up for principle, or this absolute sellout that we had. That's a war. That's a war against the stuff that we're doing. That's a war against our mission, which is political, cultural, and economic independence. You know, how do we cope with big media denouncing our movement? They do it. How have we coped? Well, we did the one thing they said we would never do, which is survive. They have done not everything, but I'm sure there's more coming. They have done everything they can to just absolutely smear who we are, mischaracterize who we are, and try to crush us with a fist. And I'm sure they're going to try some more. And that's okay, because, here's the deal. I'm not going to denounce or renounce what I believe and the organization that I believe in and the mission that I believe in because it upset some pink-haired Marxist at, the Washington Post or whatever kind of, rag these people write for. We have been extraordinarily open with who we are. Our mission is proudly and boldly printed on our website, has been since our inception. Our banners, Texas First, Texas Forever. We are literally named the Texas Nationalist Movement. When people said, well, you can't call it that. That's just such a terrible, there's such a negative baggage and connotation with that word. I'm not going to lie because somebody else wrote your dictionary. I'm not going to call myself something because it might hurt somebody's feelings. We believe that Texas is and should be an independent nation. That's what we believe. The textbook definition of that is a nationalist. And we are in Texas, and we want Texas to be that. So what do we call Texas nationalists? And we're a movement. It's like, when did we start letting the opposition write our dictionary? I don't let them dictate who I am. And I don't think you should either. But yes, thank you for your question. Okay. James asks, are there any independence movements in Tennessee? I have heard rumblings that maybe one could be starting there, but I have seen nothing organized, which is unfortunate because I think they got plenty of people there that would participate in one. I think they could have a very vibrant and solid movement there. If you find people that do, have them talk to us because we'll be more than willing to help. Okay, let's get to emails. Lisa asks, she says, are we going to watch Alberta, Canada as they ramp up their voices following the crushing loss of their PM race last Monday? Western Canada is very conservative, except for Vancouver area, British Columbia, compared to the eastern half of Canada. I'm hoping we let them know there are others out here wanting to do the same. Yeah, so I'll tell you, we're prepping some things. We've had some articles on the Partisan about Alberta. I participated in a kind of a virtual global conference that was hosted by the TEXIT folks a couple of months ago. There was a representative from Alberta that I think was supposed to participate in that. But look, that situation is ramping up, and it has been, and I think Trump probably exacerbated that, and Trump is probably the reason that Pierre Poilievre lost. I mean, and that's my opinion, right? And that's something we could debate later. But Alberta has always been kind of like us. They've always been 1 foot out the door. They've always been kind of in that stage of, look, we would be much better off out than in. We refer to them as the Texas of Canada. They refer to us as the Alberta of the U.S. So there are a lot of similarities. But look, the most impressive thing that I saw that I think signals that this has taken on a new level of seriousness is that they had 4-ish groups that were pursuing independence. They've had in and out some parties that formed and then dissolved, and I mean it's nothing that is the equivalent of us there, right? But it was, I don't know, a few weeks ago, 4 of sort of the groups got together and put together a joint statement and said, look, we're forming a coalition. And before anybody talks about Canada or Alberta being the 51st state of the United States, we deserve our referendum. Then Danielle Smith, who's the premier there, she has given indications that she is definitely down for a referendum. In fact, she lowered the threshold for a citizen initiative there to put it on the ballot. significantly lowered the threshold, essentially saying, go get the signatures. We're not going to make the barrier so high that you can't do it. Matter of fact, here, essentially saying, I mean, the only thing she could have done better was just say, look, I'm just going to put it on the ballot, right? Excuse me. So there are encouraging signs, and we are having some communication with some of the folks there, as we often do with the independence movement. So I would tell everyone, keep an eye on it. I still think that Quebec is also in the chamber for another referendum. I think, and there's been some real interesting developments there. So we'll see. But I think people should also be talking about not sleeping on what's happening in Nuevo Leon. I think their referendum, is set for like 2 years from now. So I think Nuevo Leon in Mexico, for those who did not know what Nuevo Leon I was talking about. But there's signs. Look, independence, self-determination are advancing greatly around the world. Where it's stagnating is right here, and it's by our own hand, right? It's not because the TNM is slowing it down, because we've got the Charlie Garins of the world that are that are just embarrassing us. Texas could be on the forefront of these things. We could have been, thank you. We could have been in a position where Arkansas is and had this passed last session, this transactional gold bill. We could have had an independence referendum 4 years ago, right? And I mean, there's all kinds of things. Andy Hopper, I saw him lay out a bill last night in that late state affairs committee that essentially would restructure the entire state guard to make it an actual fighting military force, full militarization of the state guard. Again, one of our priorities for years and years and years. But they held on to that bill so long that there's no way in the world it'll ever make it out, because the clock is ticking. We could have been, and still could be, but we could have been at this point so much farther ahead if it were not for these weak-kneed, jelly-spined, just sellouts, man. I said it before, I'll say it again, Quislings and cowboy boots. Anyway. Okay, let's go here. Okay, this one is from the aforementioned Ron. Ron, he says, I'm working to figure out how to get ballot access as an independent. Was told we need a whole lot of signatures. I mentioned that we should do digital collections, so that must be physical signatures. Oh, man, this sounds familiar. I recall a discussion before that you guys had done the research to show that legally the digital collection is the same as physical. Okay, so here's the rundown. Okay, so this is going to get into, so for those of you who don't kind of grasp what's happening here, the issue with independent candidates, particularly for statewide office, but you could run as an independent in a district. Matter of fact, let me just give you guys the secret. If you can get, I think the max that you have to get is 500 signatures in your district. So if you wanted to run for state senate or run for state rep and didn't want to run as a Republican or Democrat, I think the max number of signatures you have to get is 500. You do that in that district, and you get to be on the ballot as an independent. Okay. Now, there's a whole other conversation. It's not as simple as that. I mean, it is that simple to get on the ballot, but, how to run, why to run, the pros and cons, that's a whole other conversation. But statewide is essentially the same process that we had to use for the petition in relation to, putting the TEXIT question on the Republican primary ballot. Now, Ron, to your question, at the time that we ran the petition campaign, we went and cleared the process with attorneys. And there was one thing that was happening at the time that we launched the petition campaign with the digital signatures that is not in effect right now. Okay. And here's what it is. There is a case, hang on, let me pull this bad boy up, called Miller versus Nelson. I am not the Miller in that case, but it's essentially Mark Miller and a bunch of people. Hang on, let me read some names here. You may know them. Mark Miller, Scott Copeland, Laura Palmer, Wait, really? Okay. Sorry, Twin Peaks flashback. Tom Clevin, Andy Pryor. Some of you guys probably know Andy Pryor. America's Party of Texas, Constitution Party of Texas, Green Party of Texas, Libertarian Party of Texas, sued Jane Nelson, who, in her capacity as Secretary of State, to essentially say that the signature collection method for minor parties and for independents was onerous, that it was essentially represented a too high of a barrier to be able to get access to the ballot. They're saying that it's just too much to have that, those requirements are onerous, essentially. And so when we started the petition campaign, that case had wound its way up through the federal courts in the Western District of Texas. And there was an order saying that, from that judge, saying that they could collect digital signatures for that particular thing. Now, everyone knew there was going to be an appeal, I'm pretty sure, but they didn't know when it was going to come. And so essentially you had this court order that it was in effect. And although it was narrowly applied, the fact of the matter is the court upheld the legitimacy of the process of collecting electronic signatures. And so in other words, as long as everything else matched, in other words, you were to do it, then boom. Our take was to couple that and take the plain reading of the law, the Uniform Electronic Transactions Act, and take what it said and say, okay, we have the court order in hand. We have, that's playing out where you've got the federal courts essentially giving a seal to this and saying, Secretary of State, you got to accept them, along with Uniform Electronic Transactions Act and its plain reading and its application to all sections of the code. And we said, we believe, based on this, that we're allowed to do that. And so we had the thing vetted. We had people look at it. It was an interesting thing. I don't know why more people hadn't tried it ahead of us, but that's in effect what we did. What the reading of the law says is if you collect the signatures, and Uniform Electronic Transactions Act, it lays out what all has to take place there. The information that you have to collect is located in the Texas Election Code. Then boom shakalaka, Bob's your uncle. And so, without going and retreading all that ground, that aspect of it was never adjudicated in our case. What essentially happened was you had the chairman of the Texas GOP run the clock out. So we never got a proper day in court to adjudicate this out. Well, so that was the situation then. So the question becomes, well, what does that look like now? So when I got your question, I did a little research. I was able to pull the case back up, and lo and behold, I found that on February the 7th of this year, it looks like to me that it went up from an appeal from the Fifth Circuit Court up to the Supreme Court. So it's in play right now. So I don't know. I don't believe. So what it looks like from what I've been able to read this is that what little I have ahead of time is that it went from the Western District up to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. It looks like the Fifth Circuit slapped it down and upheld the Secretary of State's ability to require wet ink signatures. And so since then, I believe the plaintiffs, it looks to me like they have appealed to the Supreme Court. So this is where it's at. I think, and I'm going to look through this next couple of days, but I have a sneaking suspicion that this case may have some real interesting application on what's going to happen with the Republican Party of Texas and knocking people off the ballot with Rule 44 in this next cycle. I mean, I think there's there may be, just from a cursory examination, or it may have nothing to do with it. I don't know. But anyway, so to answer your question, if you're looking to get ballot access, I would not pursue that method. I wouldn't, not until this case is resolved. because as it stands right now, they got a federal court order in hand that basically says, that essentially, well, here, I'll show you the case. They got a court order in hand, the Secretary of State does, that basically says, yeah, they're going to uphold their ballot access or their ballot restrictions. Sorry. Okay, what's that? I'll share it with you so you can see it. There it is. Look at that. Teamwork makes the dream work. Yeah, so there it is. The Mark Miller versus Jane Nelson. We're here at the Supreme Court. So it's, it's heating up. And I'll tell you, look, our case, we were contacted by someone who was connected during our petition campaign when all Hades broke loose. We were contacted by somebody who was on RFK's campaign. This was obviously before he folded up his tent and ran into, getting fully behind Trump. But they wanted to see what the outcome of this was. They wanted to see what happened with ours. There was some discussion about whether they might be, as a campaign, be willing to come and help us with any court challenges. But what they found out really quickly is pretty much what we all know, which is the Texas election code is written in such a way as to run out the clock, right? So you slow walk let's just take it from the petition, because it's the same as getting an application for a place on the ballot in a primary. So the petition, application, and a primary are the same thing. Okay. That being said, what happens is they know that if you go to the Texas election code and then you take that and you take case law in relation to ballot printing and all those sorts of things, that they can slow walk a rejection of the ballot, and you have effectively no time to do anything judicially. I mean, that's what we ran into, right? I mean, they slow walked the rejection. When they slow walked the rejection, what it did for us was that came right around the holidays when courts don't meet, they don't have dockets, all that kind of stuff, which pushed us until after the first of the year to do anything. And by that time, they rush to get the ballots printed, because once they start printing the ballots, then you're done. You're toast, right? And so they rush to get all that, to get their ballots certified county by county and get them out to get printed. So, all they got to do is run the clock out, and they've effectively deprived you of your right to your day in court, which is what they did to us. It's just disgusting. It's despicable. Hey, Ron, thank you. Thank you for another $5 super chat. I really do appreciate it. I kind of feel like a jukebox when you do that. It's kind of cool. But like $5, I don't know, maybe with inflation, but normally like $5 would get you like Inagata DeVita twice. So, okay. What is happening here? Ah, there it is. Okay. Sorry. Clicking the wrong things. Okay, let's get back over here. I told you I was going to go overtime because it's been a while and there's plenty of questions. Okay, so this is from Timothy. He says, "Do you believe the new Regulatory Reform and Efficiency Act signed by Governor Abbott is going to be as beneficial and transparent as DOGE is for the federal government? It has only been about almost 100 days, and DOGE has uncovered billions in wasteful and abusive spending. Is it wrong to hope that the RREA will be as helpful?" Look, I have, I have hope that it will save us more money than it costs us. Texas, in the name of shrink, this is a kind of a Texas establishment politician thing. In the name of decreasing government, they increase government, right? And I understand there's some admin, some organization that you got to do, but just the irony is not lost on me. Do I think they're going to be as beneficial and transparent? Look, I don't think that DOGE has been as beneficial as it's touted, right? I mean, I love it. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Anybody taking a wrecking ball to the federal system, buddy, you're on my Christmas card list. Okay. But you know, and I think where we're seeing the biggest benefits from Doge are in exposing waste, fraud, and corruption. I think modernization of systems, you know, just looking at data, you know, like one of the things that the Doge team did at the federal level the other day related to budget, to payments and things like that. But I think that in any attempt to, first off, I think any attempt to fix the federal government is futile, right? So I think it's best that we don't hype up the effectiveness that Doge has had, because if the government's still spending like it's spending, and all they're doing is they're cutting so they can spend someplace else, then what have you really gained? You really haven't, you know, it's more efficient wasting of your money, right? Or they just become more efficient at using your own money to, you know, tyrannize you, right? I mean, that's what it looks like. But at the Texas level, I don't know how beneficial it's going to be. Given some of the legislation that I have seen come out in this session, I am not hopeful that these are the guys to have at the wheel. Will they find it? Absolutely. Texas has got some of the most ridiculous, duplicative, unnecessary nonsense that you could possibly imagine. But that being said, they will identify these things and then have to pass it back to the Texas legislature for action in the budget. And so, you know, they can deal with fraud. That's criminal. They can deal with abuse, right? That's administrative and managerial. But ultimately, that the wasteful part of it is part of the budgetary process. And so ultimately, all of those things will wind up having to be dealt with by the Texas legislature. And as we have seen, this session in particular, this biennial budget exploded spending. They're taking the surplus, they're taking the rent, you know, the economic stabilization fund. They're saying, hey, we're going to give you token property tax relief, but we're also going to take the rest of it and we're going to balloon up all of these programs, these additional programs, while we still have people being taxed out of their homes. So until you see some serious reform in the Texas legislature, and look, Dan Patrick's just as guilty. I know it seems like a lot of my ire has been directed at the Texas House, but let me tell you a little short story. I got some words for the Senate too. It just won't be tonight. But you know, the bottom line is that we have not seen a spirit of repeal and reform in the Texas legislature. And because of that, while this may look good on paper, I don't know how ultimately how effective it will be at shrinking the size of government and reducing the burden on Texas taxpayers. We shall see. But thank you for your question, Timothy. I appreciate that. Okay, guys, let me go over here and check this thing, and let's see what we got. All right, good. I think I have cleared the board. Oh, look at that. So not too long in extra innings, right? Anyway, guys, thank you. The other thing I want to tell y'all about. So let me tell you about this before I wrap this up. I don't know if you saw this article in the Partisan or not. This was kind of a big deal. You know, for all those people who said that it is, you know, it's totally against the law to have a referendum here in Texas, right? They don't even just attack the TEXIT part of it, a referendum. So this memo started getting passed around on the floor in relation to the quote unquote school choice legislation, as they were trying to derail it. And essentially what they want to do is say, okay, look, if we can't derail it, at least put it to a vote of the people. Now, oddly enough, those were a lot of the same people that were saying, wait a minute, you can't put a vote, we can't have a statewide vote like, you know, on TEXIT, right? They were objecting to the TEXIT part and essentially the statewide vote part of it. And these were the same people that were down there advocating for a statewide vote on the school choice bill, right? And here's a memo that they were passing around on the floor. Texas has held multiple statewide referenda for several controversial topics in its history. In each of these referenda, the vote was authorized by the legislature. Well, boom, shaka, laka. That's us. So the next time you have one of these legislators give you a bunch of who shot John over saying that we can't do that. That's unheard of that Texas would ask the voters to vote on something like that. I just want you to remember that these were the people that were this is what they were handing out on the floor of the Texas House. It's okay for them, but not okay for us, right? That's what they're saying. That's what they've been saying. They got to go, folks. They got to go. They got to go. I mean, there's just no other way to put it. Again, a big thank you to our new channel members, Ron Raffoon, Melinda Liu, Jasmine N., Lee Jacobson, Larry Belk, and Netgear. Thank you so much. If you want to become a YouTube channel member, be sure to, if you're on our YouTube channel, be sure to go down there and hit the membership. Become a member. Do a thing. Do something cool. Gift some memberships to some people. You'll get access to exclusive content. We got some really cool things coming. Additionally, if you have not already registered your support, if you are brand new, head over to tnm.me/vote and pledge your support today. We absolutely need all hands on deck. Look, the task is big. I mean, if it was not clear enough, if I didn't make it clear enough, I don't know if I can make it any clearer. The task is huge, and it takes all hands on deck. So head over to tnm.me/vote, pledge your support. And once you do that, be sure you download the TNM app. Go to tnm.me/app. You have to be a registered supporter to be able to log in. That's why I do these in this order. You can go download the app all day long, but if you can't log in, then what good does it do you? It just takes up room on your phone. So go pledge your vote. If you have already registered support the TNM, then download the mobile app. That's what helps us bypass tech censorship. Get her done. And I'm going to show you Uncle Sam Houston one more time. I mean, if you think that this fight is going to be won by our abundant supply of good wishes and rainbows and unicorns and all that kind of nonsense, it's not. Ron Raffoon got an answer tonight. 2 questions answered, and he was able to drop $5 in the kitty, right? Thank you for that, Ron. But this is where everybody needs to participate. If you want us to continue to do things like this, if you want us to continue to advance the cause of Texas independence, then it is incumbent upon everybody. Do not make me break out the letter that was written after the Battle of Gonzales, because I will. I think I may do that. Maybe that's the podcast that I do this week. Maybe I just go upstairs after this is over with, fire up the recorder, and read that letter. And spend the next hour explaining why that letter is, to me, one of the most consequential in the history of Texas. But, maybe I do that anyway. Maybe I send that only to people that donate, right? So head over to donate.tnm.me. And I'm going to do this because we talk about it all the time. I never end with this, but I'm going to remind every one of you of what our mission is. It's to secure and protect the political, cultural, and economic independence of the nation of Texas, and to restore and protect a constitutional republic and the inherent rights of the people of Texas, folks. This is who we are. This is what we do. This is what I do. This is what Kara does. This is what Nate, Daphne, a bunch of you people in the chat. I've seen some names over there. This is what we do. This is our calling. This is our time to make independence a reality. Why our generation, I will never know. But if it's going to be foisted upon our generation, then the least we can do is to meet the call, to step up, to show up, to speak up, to stand up, and to go win our independence, to do whatever is necessary. If it is to be up to our generation, then let's go win. Let's go win the thing. Are you sure you guys want me to do rant portions of this? Let me know. Send them an email to coffeetalk@tnm.org. Let me know or drop it in the comments wherever you see this. It's time that we part tonight. I want to thank you guys all for joining me on, here we are, the new night. It's going to take a little bit of getting used to, but I think I like Thursdays. I think it works out. Let me know what you think. But in the meantime, until I see you again, I will leave you with the words I leave you with every time we're together. They're not my words. They're the words of Sam Houston when he said that Texas will again lift its head and stand among the nations. I believe that time is now. And the question is, will you stand with her? Good night, everyone.